wonderful to have you here. You know, every year, the renewable purchase obligation, there was a seminar which was conducted in 2015. At that time, we had Mr. Tripathi, Tarun Kapoor, and those gentlemen who were responsible at the time for actually moving the solar mission. So, what happened is that if you see the upping of the ante, where we are talking of 100 gigawatt from solar, you know, so that all happened through these discussions in the past, where REPA was involved. In solar, what's happened is interesting. In solar, while we made a plan of 100 gigawatt, the movement suddenly in the last 1.5 years has not been up to the mark. So, the period that we and China started together, China was also on the similar stage in exactly in the year 2013 when we launched that RASM report, the Rashtriya Urja Solar Mission report, where we had been talking long time back, Srivastava will know, 50 minimum. Then we said if the renewable obligation is there, solar obligation itself, and I had a different opinion. I did not want the purchase obligation, because how would the generator, if he does not have a capacity, end up fulfilling a purchase obligation? So before purchase, there must be a portfolio obligation. So portfolio obligations were missing. Then later on, after we put this up in our publication NERTIA for several times, you know, we must have written almost relentlessly for 2 years. They brought a new idea called the generation obligation. So it's like, you know, not combining the things, but it's like you put one generation obligation separate and purchase obligation separate. I would say hardcore reality is what markets understand is a different language. When you want investments to flow, your language has to change, and that is portfolio. This is the language the markets understand. And our biggest mistake is we are putting what we understand, we are trying to teach people what they don't understand. So when we are dealing with banking and financial institutions, they ultimately will understand a portfolio language, right? So if the government can still go forward and mix the two things up and bring the portfolio obligation as an upfront strategy to increase the capacity. Just talking about an idea of federalism is not going to work. We have to apply that. Today, every state is capable. Like I come from the state of Maharashtra. I can only tell you that Maharashtra's potential is simply equal or even better in the future to UAE. UAE is a $500 billion economy. $500 billion is the GDP. I don't like GDP actually, but still we have to compare. The economists are trying to have a tendency to only measure GDP with the success. But yes, even if you take one benchmark of finance and economics, then a UAE making $500 billion must be crossed by Maharashtra, because Maharashtra should be saying in this region, I'm the big daddy, you know, amongst all these states, you know, no problem. Because they already we have hit $400 billion worth of GDP contribution, of which Mumbai alone contributes $200 billion. I found that Delhi as a state contributes about 150 odd, billion dollars. So we must understand that even cities are becoming powerful. They are no less. And there are city countries which are almost like small cities like Singapore, which are contributing big time in GDP, and the wealth of nations is created in that fashion. But unless we get into the dynamics, on one side is our ability to engineer, our ability to produce results, and on the other side of the argument is the hard reality that we are not delivering things in time, number one, and we have a lot of, I would say, bottlenecks in terms of lethargic or a bureaucratic approach to system, which is not changed in spite of, I would say, a positive government or whatever you call it initially when it came, 3 years. I see we're doing everything in every front, but we are not able to correct ourselves in the infrastructure and the power industry. The two core economic movement agenda is not in your hands, because there you are faltering, and when you falter in infrastructure, what you effectively do is very simple, that you actually pull yourself back. You're competing with an Indian, let's say living in Mumbai, or in Delhi, NCR, we spend 5 hours or 6 hours, or even a Pune, 2 hours to reach 2 to 3 hours in the traffic, spend time, and we are not doing productive work. And at the end of the day, it will be compared at what will an average Indian produce with all the intellect he or she has, compared to a German citizen, compared to a Swedish citizen, compared to I would say, anybody in the Middle East, or a small economy like Singapore, or even Bhutan for that matter. Like one of the scary things, I don't want to name which person told me, I said, there will be no engineers from India who will be operating hydro now. Because the next generation is already going away because of the conditions. Right? Then I said to him, we will borrow engineers from Bhutan. I was shocked at this explanation. But it's not untrue. Because they were not capable of doing any projects earlier. But they had no, neither the attitude nor the ability at that point of time. Slowly, our best engineers have gone there. And one thing that we did there, which is wonderful for them, which I always talk in Bhutan, is we did not give you fish every day. We taught you fishing, right? So that you can do it yourself. Now they enjoy fishing, right? So they're engineers. Now they're producing, I tell you, some of the finest operational engineers for hydro. A hydro power plant will be better operated by the Bhutanese engineers after 4 or 5 years than an Indian engineer. People must not get the shocker of their life when I tell this. I'm watching it already happening. Pride to have, they're short, small country. They want to be power. And then you can't complain because your approach to them is very peculiar. Your approach is, you are not approaching them like an elder brother. Our approach is that we are dealing with all these people in today, not, and our own states. See, like I heard Arunachal is a very difficult place to work. Manko Saab ne bola mere ko, right, some time back. But I say it's a difficult place to work, Manko Saab. But I am very clear that my friends, my alumnus, we are all common alumnus, but my batchmates, some of them who are there in Northeast, they tell me it's much easier because handling people's objective, it's like he feels you're not friendly with him, right? When you go to the state, they have a lot of issues with us. So our own states have issues where we are not treating them like our people, right? So if we can treat Bhutan on even basis, we must treat our states also on even basis. What's the problem? Export of electricity happens from Bhutan. Export of electricity into our system will happen from Himachal, from a water-rich state like Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim. We need to give them the opportunity to exploit because they will not consume. Their need is very small. For example, I was talking to Tarun Kapoorji. Last week he was in Mumbai. All of the North India states were there. So when Tarunji was there, then we were discussing. Our need in Himachal is only 80 megawatt roughly. Balance what we do, 80 to 100 megawatt, it comes, then we don't need more power. Balance what we do. Obviously, the balance power has to be absorbed by other states, and it's better to absorb the renewable called hydro. So these are the issues that will come up today. Because coal, whatever said and done, more and more we go forward, it will be more difficult to take out the coal from the ground. And the pollution, I am very predictive of the fact that all the existing thermal power plants must be definitely mandatorily have both the NOx and TSOx. Without that, it cannot be compared apple to apple. We are comparing solar without investing in the environmental technologies. Because that's the same happens with hydro. But capex is very costly. This is so many crores per megawatt. Nuclear will say, okay, 10, 11 crores per megawatt will say very costly. But you treat it differently. Do the financial engineering. There is perpetual fuel available to you. Nuclear is renewable. Where is the carbon? There is no carbon. Hydro is totally renewable. Where is the carbon? Right? Solar is renewable for sure. Everybody knows it. So, non-carbon based energy is most important. There is no carbon defrayment required. And we are using only the world language. Recently, I tell you, I will not name which minister went there. But what happened is in a different field. The world is bringing Industry 4.0. I don't know how many of you have heard Industry 4.0? Some of us are engineers. How many of you have heard, right? So, people are not even looking at what is happening. The European Union has very cleverly brought this Industry 4.0. The game plan is very simple. That countries like India, because already China has become a big competitor. So countries like India will not adopt to robotics. And that was my final subject at NIT Chapter. I majored actually in artificial intelligence and non-conventional machining processes. Although I'm a media man today, right? My fundamental strengths were these. And I scored heavily in artificial intelligence. And we'll have some of these stalwarts on the top. H. Nagesh sir. Prasad sir, please. Please give a big hand. Director Transmission, Karnataka Power Transmission Corporation Limited. Mr. H. Nagesh, Yogendra Prasad sir, needs no introduction. May I request T. Arora sir to please come. Agrawal sir to हमारे प्रेम संबंध है. And Dr. Shastri, because he's come first time, and Tripathi ji and me, I really like Tripathi sir very much. We are indebted to him for what he did when he was secretary. very happy to see him, and you are a colleague
Yeah.
of the party, sir. It's wonderful to have you here, sir.
Scientist, he just retired. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, because, like you said, you are all engineers, but I'm the only scientist, material scientist or something from IIT Delhi. I passed out from IIT Delhi in '84 as a PhD in basically on solar photovoltaics. Perhaps we are the first group we have prepared the amorphous silicon solar cell in India. But you are right. Well, when I hear you, I mean, I also have a feeling to say so many things, because I would say those people who worked in 1980s at the fundamentals and working on solar cells, or you can say started working on solar cells, are nowhere. I don't see a single name on this, and it is either captured by the economist or somebody, or maybe the developers or somebody. So, and like you rightly pointed out, the basic background is missing. Like you said, what happened to the CDT? In fact, my few papers were initially on cadmium telluride, the first cells and other thing. So why that CDT is important to this? Maybe I can give you one of few examples. If you look at the spectrum, sun spectrum, it has this typical the energy distribution there. And the cadmium telluride material by itself, it catches that particular area of the spectrum. But you know, if you look at this spectrum is different in different sites. Specifically, if you go to the coastal sites, because of the water vapor content in the atmosphere, the spectrum absorbs typically certain wavelengths. And those wavelengths are actually those places where the silicon is supposed to be generating, because silicon spectral response is slightly tilted, whereas amorphous silicon spectral response is right on the top, and the cadmium telluride is on the top. So that's why the Americans, in fact, they tell that the cadmium telluride is the most suitable. That's one reason. The other reason is the temperature coefficient. As the temperature rises, the fall in the power and other thing. Well, that's the fundamental difference. What I'm saying is the real, and this I don't need a first solar fellow has to tell us. Okay, we can develop. And if you go to IIT Delhi, there is a thin film group which has been working quite some time. I don't know whether you heard Professor K.L. Chopra. He is a man who written the first book on thin film solar cells. There's still a Bible in some places, and then he's a man, thin film man. I'm his student. Of course, he's a hardcore master. I took about 5.5 years. I know you hate PhDs, but I do agree. But you know, PhD is a way. I mean, the way you learn your life. It's not a PhD that I feel that way. Anyway, so I passed out in '84, sir, and then I joined in the defense. In fact, I was a fire control engineer. I was working on a fire control system for torpedoes. For 4 or 5 years, I worked in NSTL Visakhapatnam. I'm the one who developed a fire control system for the seaward defense boats to fire the top roads and bearing. That's different because of my little what you call the this instrumentation knowledge. And then I came back to MNRE in 1989, sorry. And from there I continued, and I joined the Solar Energy Center in 1992, and since then till 2017 I was there in Solar Energy Center. Now it is the National Institute of Solar Energy. This basically, the institute is the one which actually does the testing, modules, certification and all sort of stuff. Still, I would say, of course, everybody struggles all the things. There's a lot of needs to be developed. What we are talking about, the generation and other things. So I hope you must have heard the new phenomena that is coming out, the PID, potential induced degradation in the modules. It's a huge, very heavy, and the Germans and Americans don't tell you what happens. If you rise it, they say they already knew it, and then the next thing is micro cracks. These modules actually they get into micro cracks. They start snail tracks. This is the area I'm working. Because I'm retired, but I'm still working with my students are still there. So I still publish papers in the journals, Solar Energy Journal, perhaps one of those the frequently sort of I do a review of the papers also. Oh, that's my introduction. I just can keep on going like this. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
I want to correct one position. I don't hate PhDs at all. That's not the mind. I'm a critic of the PhD system. I'm not. But I would have loved to do a PhD myself, which is valuable, right? In some area of, let's say, macroeconomics or anything. No problem. I have nothing with that. But the purpose is defeated, and I'm not only speaking. Now, fortunately, economist has written. 10 years I have been questioning this issue. What is the purpose of the PhD program? If they define the purpose, clear objectives are defined, country wants to develop new products, then we will get this Make in Indias and everything up. Now, I feel with each of these experts, I will be shooting a question literally, so where we are going, and depending on each one is an expert in rural India. Let me start. Shastri Sahab ne bola, so I tell you that aapne bola, like I am saying once again, PhD is essential, but let us take the direction of the PhDs. I was never against PhDs, sorry. So I want to clarify that. I'm not against PhDs. I'm against the way we are doing it. Yeah. Nagesh Saab, the success with you I have to start, because you have really succeeded in BESCOM. Like you say, it's not power cut even now, in spite of the crisis. And I know the kind of crisis, coal issues you talked to me some time back. You know, what is so unique that Karnataka is able to continue both in the transmission sector and in the distribution sector? Why it is delivering better than most of the states of India, I would say?
Karnataka is having required infrastructure, and our planning is, time to time it is updated and planned properly and implemented. Our engineers also striving hard. Since beginning it has come like that, because they did their education in school, engineering in most reputed college in Bangalore. Bangalore is known for education institutions. There are about 150 and 60 engineering colleges in and around Bangalore alone, with a very good faculty. With their enriched knowledge and all, these people, they interact with each other, and there will be a lot of interaction sessions. And even government also is very keen in understanding the day-to-day happenings. Like if there is any shortage, immediately Power Minister will intervene. What will the Power Minister? Now the more dynamic is Sukumar. Earlier Shobha Karandlaje was there in BJP and Shidurappa. Because power is most important. If there is no proper power supply, the government will definitely go to ducks. They are mainly depending on the power supply, reliable and continuous, uninterrupted. See, now the installed capacity is 20,000 megawatt. Availability is 10 to 11,000 megawatt only. Now, state peak is 10,000, out of which 3,600 comes from hydro alone. I suppose it is the highest in any state in India. Next comes Himachal Pradesh, something like that, if I am correct. As far as solar is concerned, we are the pioneers. So far we have installed about 67,000 megawatt of solar. Jio has issued for 67 megawatt solar, and the interconnection has been given for about 50% of it, 35,000 megawatt. And now still interconnected is 12,000 megawatt. Out of it, 650 megawatt is now the availability during daytime, 8 hours a day, 6. So that we could able to give 7 hours power supply for the irrigation pump set, 4 hours during day, 3 hours during night. They are happy. And most of the projects now we have taken up in distribution sector in BESCOM and other ESCOMs. I was technical in BESCOM for 7 years. We have introduced Nyantar Jyoti. Earlier it started in Gujarat as a kilometer Jyoti or something like that. We have renamed it as Nirantar Jyoti. Nirantar means continuous power supply, Nirantar in Kannada. They are happy. We see we could able to divide this, bifurcate the feeders, rural feeders into 2 parts. One rural, one IPSS. One villages, that is for commercial, consumers. Other one is for IPSS. One is for domestic, commercial and all. So about 3,000 feeders have been bifurcated. 3,000 domestic feeders and 3,000 purely IPSS feeders. They are happy. No complaints absolutely. And all stations are functioning very well. And every year minimum of 30 stations are being added to the system, 30 substations, and nearly 1,000 kilometers of EHT lines. So last year we added about 850 kilometers of EHT lines and 30 substations. This year we have ambitious plan of establishing 40 substations. So far we have very completed about 20. 20 is balanced. Still there is 5 more months left. I am monitoring every day. The very good money system is there, and a lot of IT institutes taking place in BESCOM, like spot billing, and then distribution autonomous system for Bengaluru city, and then customer care center, one of the best in India. Within 20 minutes you were able to attend the complaint in Bengaluru. Such a huge topic of more than 1 crore population. And and consumers base is also 1 crore. Discom alone, overall 2 crores and added all over the state. And we have got a very good distribution network, and we have got buffer transformer bank. Spare transformers are kept in the stores. Whenever the transformer fails, we'll be able to replace the transformers in urban area within 24 hours, in rural area 72 hours, that is 3 days. So these are the initiatives taken in distribution companies. Of course, as you are aware, Karnataka is the least, currently the state where transmission losses are only 3.28%, the least in India. And continuously we are getting award by the Minister of Power. 3.28 is the least transmission loss. And as far as smart grid concerned, we have tried to take up one pilot project in there in Bangalore in one area, but it dropped because earlier Pandya was the IAS officer, I was the director technician. It has come up to final stage, but when Chodan came, as abruptly has dropped, I don't know the reason. He might have thought that it's costly or something like that. He said it's costly. So consumers consider mix of consumers 23,000, but cost was 40,000. With premium, he has calculated it to 60,000. Then see per consumer it is costly, we can't afford to it, we dropped it. Now Mysore has taken project under pilot projects. 14 pilot projects are undertaken by the Government of India, out of which Mysore is one of the pilot projects. So it comprises of 22,000, all mix of consumers. They have started on AMI and smart metering and SCADA integration, all that. Opposition is in final stage. All other people are coming and they are having interaction with the CESC, that is Chamdesh Electricity Company in Mysore, 1 kilometers away from Bangalore. Bangalore is also prepared a note, BESCOM has prepared a roadmap for 2025 for introducing this smart grid in a big way. And now they have taken up the cabling of this lines of 11 kV distribution line, and distribution 11 kV line in Bangalore city as a model, so-called model subdivision, selected subdivisions. The 5 to 6 subdivisions in each ESCOM. In Bangalore they have taken up about 7 subdivisions, completely underground. Of course, heart of the city and business district is all underground only in Bangalore, but there are 7 more, which is very costly. And KERC, Karnataka Electricity Company, has also approved. It's a good move so that we can avoid accidents, so interest also can reduce. These are the initiatives, and there are many planning going on. They don't mind spending any amount in Karnataka. The Chief Minister and the government is supporting to improve the power supply position and to provide reliable supply, so to keep this mass and consumers happy. And our luckily the IAS officers working in Karnataka also proactive, as I observed. I worked under so many IAS officers since I being the senior most technocrat in Karnataka. So I've been recognized by most of the bureaucrats and even CM and others. So my duty only is to focus on the consumer services more of a day. And many people.
Question,
the
Karnataka goes because where most of the states are going on net metering, the rooftop. Karnataka is the grass metering, if I remember correct, because there is a difference between the net metering.
No, we have converted that into net metering now.
So why can't you have gone to the grass metering?
That earlier we thought of grass metering would be better. Now after getting these suggestions from the public, and the KERC also has intervened, so we converted that into net metering.
Yeah, there is something to do with the pricing of the energy and other things. Yeah?
Pricing 9 rupees 56
Yeah,
paisa.
this is the
Highest.
very highest. That's
Very
why
highest.
we pay.
People are very happy now.
Yeah.
Those who installed earlier, they are getting more money, like 1 pinch more than a rent or something like that. For 5 rupees, 9 rupees, 5 rupees per unit, per rooftop, solar rooftop. And 1 megawatt is the cap. More, not, they can't install more than 1 megawatt. Now they are restricted because they thought it is costly and they are going to lose revenue. They are restricted to the load equivalent to the sanctioned load. If 3 kilowatt is sanctioned per house, you cannot go more than 3. Earlier they have installed 1 megawatt and 1 megawatt and 500 kilowatt into number of installations. That way they could be able to mobilize. They are able to make money. So now it stopped. Now they reduced the tariff also. It has come down to 420, 450, something like that, depending upon the wattage range. So this policy and guidance are prepared by me, drafted by me, and got approved by KERC. It has been copied by other states also. You can inquire with that. It's one of the best policies. Everybody knows it. And then Mostly smart grid is the most efficient use of transmission and distribution system. Most efficient use of transmission distribution system is a smart grid. So efficient way of using. There may be EMI, there may be digital conversion from electricity to digital display. This all is there. But I'm disappointed a bit with my pilot project because I wanted to finish it off during my regime. But unfortunately we dropped. But now roadmap is prepared by Pillai. Not Mr. Knowing Smart Grid Forum of India President. Pillai. They prepared a roadmap. Earlier also roadmap was there, now it is re-modified and some corrections are made. So it's been approved by the board of BESCOM also. So they will take up shortly. And in America, I went twice. America, where as per my observation, smart grid is still in a smart infant stage. So, for example, Sacramento, about 100 kilometers away from 150 away from San Francisco, capital of California. They have fixed the smart meters. The revenue has increased. People are agitated. That's all. But no other activities related to smart grid has taken place. We are better. If you try, we can be number one in the world. You can say. Thank you very much.
So, he gave a complete overview of what's happening in the state of Karnataka. I'm very happy that Nagesh is leading the way. And I would say, we need the completion of the project. So, as you rightly said, things should be done in right time. We should not delay. One of the most important things is when you cause delays, you at the end of the day, you hurt the system. There's a delay condonation is a very dangerous thing. So, if minus what happens in hydro geological surprise, which is not in the hands of engineers, which is the nature of the situation. I think the rest of the things we cannot delay ourselves because some reason or the other we are delaying the project. So I think if your projects are completed in time, half of them at least one, the cost and time overruns take away your budgets and government only ends up paying the taxpayers' money into the system. It's like a black hole going into it. May I request Prasad Saab now to say a few words. Prasad Saab, आप तो हमेशा बोलती हैं, लेकिन एकदम संक्षिप्त में हम बोल सकते हैं जो भी.
A lot of discussions are going on in the power sector. I can only say two things very important. In power sector, the most important thing is the planning. And that duty has been given by this government to CA, Central Electricity Authority. Central Electricity Authority was created for this purpose. But somehow they are not doing their duty, or either they are not being heard by the government. Because power is required by everybody, quality power is required by everybody around the clock. And if you combine all the generators, you have to see that how much power should come through thermal, how much power should come through hydro, how much solar. All these things are to be planned properly. Sometimes government changes, they say, I give priority to hydro. Sometimes government changes, give priority to thermal, sometimes solar. But they don't understand that how the power subject has to be dealt with. Unfortunately, in our country, the technology of power system are not being understood by more than 90% of the engineers. What to talk of general people? They don't understand the fundamentals of the engineering. Just see the most important thing, after making so many noise, so many times, Honourable was the Minister, when I was CMD of NHPC. At that time, we have raised the ability-based tariff should be formed. At that time, power supply was at the variation of more than 1.5 Hz frequency. Lot of damages were taking place in the generators. And today, grid code has been implemented after a lot of efforts. And according to that, frequency has to be maintained near 50 Hz. And if there is a variation of frequency on lower side by 0.01 Hz, tariff increases by 36 paise per unit. Similarly, when the demand is less than the generation, rate reduces by 20.36 paise. So grid code one has to understand. And we have today national grid in the country. Fortunately, we have very good network today. At least I can say it has a lot of improvement in the network of extra high voltage transmission lines. And we have improved our frequency. But what happens? Whenever the DISCOM companies are drawing the power, when the frequency goes low, they have no alternative than to make the load shedding. And similar thing is in night time when frequency goes high, generators don't get any money. And you have seen it today that there has been a lot of bankruptcy. Because I want to tell general things first. A lot of bankruptcy in the country. Most of the companies are from the power sectors. Now the plant load factors of most of the generators, especially thermal power plants, have gone down to 60%. And the cutoff range is 60. If the power load factor goes below 60%, means that company, generator company, has to go in loss. Then how they can pay the cost of the plants? I just have also informed that the NPAs are increasing day by day. Finally, the entire country will become bankrupt. It's not that the bankers will make bankrupt, the entire country will become bankrupt. Today, the discom companies are going like that. You have national grid, but you are cutting the powers. I'm happy that Karnataka is doing very good, at least in this subject, and at least efforts are in the entire country. But today, normally people say there is loss of power. The politicians do not understand. Today there is no much theft of power. Today there is much technical losses. That people have to understand. Whatever you are generating, this is energy which can't be stored. Whatever you are generating, that has to be consumed. That is not happening. People are making noise that I'll make so much of the solar. Daytime they are making, but what is the arrangement for giving power in the evening? You are not making reservoir projects, you are not making the pump storage schemes. And with the help of batteries, the solar cannot be economical at all, whatever may engineers talk. People have to understand the fundamentals of the engineering first, and power has to be given, because as he has told, rightly he has told, that people are doing PhD but of no use. Mr. Patil has told, it is not the subject. People are studying, leaving the country because they are not feeling safe here. That's feeling somewhere they are being applied properly. Here, we really need practical engineers, practical doctors who can really do the needful correctly. The way doctors are being treated in America, even there are 1% they are being treated in India. In America, if a doctor makes one mistake, he will be hanged. Everybody has to pass, take degree every 10 years. My daughter is a doctor there now. I have understood what is the technology America is using for the doctors. And what is the technology they are using for the powers also. There is no shortage of power even for a second. See, every country in the world has been given certain way out. In America, you are using gas because you have 75% of gas, but India don't have. But at least God has given us water. Why water power is not being used? We have written so many articles. There was a power collapse you have mentioned in 2012. You remember I have written one article on, did the press conference on 12th of June 2012. I have written that there will be collapse of grid at any time. And my article was Health of Indian Power System, its impact on Indian economy. After 50 days of that, there was collapse. 3 days India was, 2/3 India was in the dark. At that time, Mr. Shinde was the Power Minister, and he has called me at that time and told me, Prasad, how you have forecasted all these things. And because seeing the system, it's not that I have done some misdeeds in this case, because it was general collapse of the grid, because as the system was going on, it was to collapse. And today, there is collapse on the economy, completely. So, unless we maintain the grid frequency properly by generating different sources, things will not improve at all, because now entire circuit of the country, of the whole is connected. And you are maintaining that the economy is improved through the help of power consumption. Per capita power consumption shows the economical strength of any country in the world. And today we are worse than Bhutan, worse than Vietnam. So many small countries. For everything, our position is going to be worse. So I can say only that fundamental knowledge should be to the engineers. They should be taught things, and at least technical people should be given respect by the ruler of this country. Otherwise, no ruler in this country can save this country. People have to go and see. I have and given lecture in the IIT, one or two institutions. I told them, please go to the villages and see what is the voltage people are getting. I have seen in Bihar that voltage available to the terminal of the motors is 180 volt, where we need 40 volt. There is regulatory order that power supply should be maintained at LT level 420 or minus 380, but it never more than 300. No power consumption is there, but nothing is working. So without power consumption, it cannot improve the economy of this country. And I can only say that people should understand fundamentals of engineering, and for that, whatever technology is required, it should be adopted. That's why I request always God now that we don't soon come to the ruler of this country who are being respected by the rulers, and they should think how to improve future of this country. Otherwise, the way things are going on, it will go from bad to worst. Thank you.
So basically this is the warning signal, and I tell you there are a lot of other economic issues which have come. But the most important thing is, again, the same fact comes what Prasad Sahab says. The right engineers, the right engineering training, the right technology knowledge, awareness, exposure, and the right solutions. And you cannot neglect the resource like water in your country. So इस पे मैं चाहूँगा कि अब ये जो बात हो गई है, मैं आपसे बुलवाऊंगा वाटर पे, लेकिन पहले मैं चाहता हूँ कि अरोड़ा साहब बोले इसमें, क्योंकि उनका एक दूसरा व्यू भी है जो हमें सुनना चाहिए. आइए सर, प्लीज गिव अ बिग हैंड.
Professor Sir, gentlemen of the dais and friends, of course we heard a lot about the power sector, and I would like to repeat certain things before I talk on the issue you wanted me to talk. Well, we have today 331 gigawatt, but our demand as per the government is 160 gigawatt. Why this anomaly in 60 years? Why the PLF has gone down? Somebody blames it on the grid code because the affordability becomes a problem if you go out of the grid code, and then people are surrendering the power and the PLF is going down. So if that is, grid code is going to be the crux of non-performing assets, then you need to review this, how to handle this. Now we also wanted energy efficiency. Earlier we were using incandescent lamps, motors, fans, who could run with 47.5 to 51.5 frequency with variation of voltage from 350 to 450, and with the coming of these LEDs and smart fans and motors, we haven't changed our distribution system. We haven't changed anything else, but we have changed the endpoint, the consumer point, with the result that the consumption has gone down, and most of these elements get destroyed because we haven't changed the distribution system. Now coming to the demand, how the demand is calculated. It's very surprising that real-time data by all transmission companies is 132 kV and above. But you and me are talking about 415, 33 kV or 11 kV. There is no real data. The SLDC gives that this is the demand, so he says I want these areas so much megawatts to be load shedding. The distribution companies decide on their own. So what they write, I went to many substations, what they write load shedding is maintenance. If there are 300 load shedding in 3 months and maintenance is during the same time, God must be doing something during that time. Why a transformer gets burned or get destroyed from 1 to 3 in the PM or from 6 to 9 in the evening every day? There's got to be something, because it's all manual. Now, which means that 160 gigawatt is not the real demand. The demand is much more. We know the affordability is a major issue, but when you go to the villages, they are ready to pay 5 rupees, 6 rupees, 7 rupees, but they want power. You give them power at the off-peak hours night time? Do you want those villagers to sleep during daytime and work during night time? That's not fair. Because their power collection is very poor, revenue is very poor. So you give more power for the shopping mall or beer bars, right? So where you get more money. So we have to settle this social evil first. I mean, they are equally demanding these people. Where are the distribution or transmission or generation companies where they talk about, or regulators when they talk about that we will take interest of the consumer as well as the supplier, but nothing of that sort. We make so many regulations, and if I go through the regulations from 1948 to 2003 and so many iterations, and still continuing on the open access, and recently draft has come on the interconnectivity. Where we are, we talk about New India, but we still talk about regulations on interconnectivity. That's very strange. It cannot work like that. Then coming back to areas where manufacturing an issue. Now we have been independent since 47. We have many companies like BHEL from late 50s, NTPC, many utility companies, and many big engineers. But I just want to ask the August gathering in the manufacturing, why even after 70 years, for a hydro project, we cannot design a runner ourselves. We have to depend on outsiders. Why for designing a steam turbine for a supercritical new technology, we have to depend upon foreign company? The first collaboration was done in 1980s with BHEL and Siemens. Why we haven't done? I worked in a company for 25 years in Toshiba. They also took from GE, but then they developed their own technology and they compete with GE. But why we have a company or engineers in India who cannot compete with foreign companies? We have very good engineers, but something is not allowing them to do it. We need to settle that first. What is not allowing them to do it? As Professor said, the IIT people went out. They went out because they were not given opportunities. Similarly, the public sector is not given opportunities to develop on their own. But then when you compare the power sector companies and ISRO is an example, living example. They have developed much more on their own, and they've got technology much more than even world. But that's again government, again the same engineers. So I have a question for engineers from the power and from the space. Why can't we? The same India, same engineers. Why can't we do it? So we have issues on the manufacturing. We have issues on the turbine design. Now I'll come to the topic what we were talking about. You see, we have now different modalities of power: thermal, hydro, nuclear, renewable. Now with the renewable quantum getting so much integrated to the grid, naturally there got to be problems, because when we need power, the sun doesn't shine. It doesn't shine. When we need power, the wind doesn't blow. So in that sense, whenever the wind blows or the sun shines, we get that power, use whatever maximum we can use, balance we can store. Now, pump storage is the best example. No doubt about it. But when you have a response time in comparison to the grid issues which will come with the integration of large variable resources like wind, solar, so you need the response time in seconds, in minutes, and in hours. So how we load as well as the time duration, we can only do it in seconds by the battery system, in minutes by the pump storage, and in hours by the thermal. So we have to have a judicial use of these powers for maintaining our grid. Now we can always create a policy by making a fear. If you go beyond this frequency, you will be charged so much. What he does, he cannot get the revenue, so he cuts the power. Who is the sufferer? The consumer. Generator, if you don't bring down the load during the lean period, you will not be paid anything. Why would you do that? So you're creating problem for both. So you need to find a solution. You can't make a decision first and then you think about it. But I think the Indians are very famous for one thing. First find the faults, then look for solution, then find a solution and then look for faults again. So we live our life like that. Fault, solution, fault. And this is happening. If somebody came with I'm also saying the same thing. If somebody came with a good solution for grid, I'm still finding a fault in it. But I'm trying to say that you should have thought about this thing, that today affordability is the main issue. You are not able to supply power to all because of affordability. Somebody who doesn't get the food how can you think about 7 rupees a hour? So have you thought about it? So what you do is you give them subsidies, cross subsidies, and then you say power sector is non-performing asset. So the problem is within us, in our policies and everything. So we need to think about it. So coming back to storage system, now I was talking to certain engineers from CA, from theory, and I think they are looking at a right way nowadays, that wherever power, whatever source, for ensuring that the minimum voltage fluctuation, minimum frequency fluctuation, and controlling the transit changes, or even the harmonics due to the renewable energy, we should, when you are curtailing the power of solar or wind, that curtailment period should be utilized for storage of energy, and then that stored energy should be given during the peak hours to make more money. So you make a viability of that project, and similarly selling that power at a higher price to the people who can afford it. So I think in that is the area I would like people to think on this storage. And Government of India with World Bank and Tamil Nadu government is working on a wind project with the battery storage to make wind power project a peaking power plant, which normally we used to have gas based as a peaking power. But if wind becomes a peaking power plant, it will change the status of the country. Thank you very much.
We would have loved to hear TC more, but right now I think he has a flight. Agrawal sahab jara, aapke jara thode, kya bolte hain, your nice words will actually motivate.
Thank you, Professor Iyer, for inviting me. Well, there is windfall in the wind tariffs. Recently, it was awarded at ₹2.64 only, 250 megawatt Bhadla. And great sunshine in the solar tariff, down to ₹2.62 only. But unfortunate part is, our water is passed through, not to the needy, but to the wastage. This is very unfortunate part. And here, there is need of appropriate mix of power with the help of hydro. Actually, people are talking hydro only for the sake of power, but I never admit that it is only for the sake of power. It is having many advantages which no other power is having. First is water security, no other power can provide. Second is food security, no other power can provide. Third is power security itself, about which Prasad Sahab has spoken so many things. Fourth is grid stability or grid security. Then is environmental sustenance. Then if you combine all these things, then it is for sustainable sustainability of the mankind. So no power is there which is for sustainability of the mankind. Even if we go through the Bhagavatam, one sentence is there that हमारा जो असली धन है वो जमीन है और पशुधन है. असली धन जो कि हमेशा रहेगा, बाकी कोई भी धन कभी भी इधर उधर हो सकता है. And these धन can be preserved, cannot be preserved without water. Now Shukla Sahab and Sharma Sahab are here. How many people staying in Delhi know that 300 cusac water they are getting from Terry and 495 cusac water they are getting from Bhakra. And this figure is enough to supply 1 crore people. 1 crore people are dependent on Terry and Bhakra water. So people, the policy makers are forgetting that in case these were not developed, what would be the scenario in Delhi? These are the advantages, and without hydro, survival of the mankind will be very difficult. And no, I don't think that what will be the future after 20 years. I admire that this great efforts of India for the solar. In 2015, Modi ji visited France, initiated 1000 gigawatt of solar. Member countries agreed. 46 countries have signed for 1000 megawatt because there are 121 countries in the world which are sunshine rich. On 6th December, the complete body will come into function, International Solar Association, and this is UN agency. It will support all the countries, but no country, but people should tell the importance of water, not power, because power is secondary. This is the, even in Bhakra and Tehri, first thing is irrigation, not power generation.
Yes, yes.
This is misconception of the majority that this is for power. I always tell that it is not power, it is many other things which are primary, and power is only the secondary thing. Thank you very much.
May definitely with that view, I think we close. I request all of us to come over for a good photograph.